Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is getting a lot of attention these days. Unfortunately, the information our media is feeding us is grotesquely distorted. Well, take Ethiopia, for instance. We've been led to believe that the tragic famine there is due to natural causes and that it can only be overcome through massive infusions of humanitarian aid. Very little has been said about the Ethiopian government's role in all of this until now. Our speaker tonight is Colonel Solomon Belete. Colonel Belete is a native Ethiopian, having lived there since his birth in 1936. When he left Ethiopia in 1977, he had been a colonel in the Ethiopian Armed Forces, a special commando, a weapons training officer, a battalion commander, and a commandant in the Ethiopian Marine Corps. He is a graduate of Haile Selassie University with a degree in geography, and he also graduated from the National Defense Academy in Ethiopia with a degree in military science. Colonel Belete is currently a resident of the United States, and he is active in the Ethiopian resistance effort to liberate his country from the Marxist domination it is now under. His unique perspective will be very valuable in showing us the horrors of life under Marxism. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Colonel Solomon Belete.
First and foremost, I would have to ask your pardon for my accent and my English, because English happens to be my third language. Well, three languages, but English is now my first language. Then my native language becomes automatically second language, and the only person I talk to in my native language is my wife and children. And the third one is the language that I started from primary school to secondary school. That was French, and I don't know what's next, perhaps Russian. I hope not. So you will understand if I have if I couldn't find the right word to say, I'll probably say it in body language, so you will understand what I really wanted to say. And please permit me to express my people's profound and enthusiastic gratitude for your astounding response to their plight. Hundreds and thousands of young children, mothers' life was spared because of your response, of your humanly gift to save life. Tonight I want to speak about a very real tragedy and its root cause that brought about my country and people to the brink of extinction. And that calamity, which still persists, is perhaps less killing of the children, but although the intensity has been reduced and the effect of it has been treated, the cause is still there. So Ethiopia, first of all, I like to most of you to know a little bit about its historical backgrounds and geographical facts. Ethiopia is a nation, is one of the oldest Christian nation on earth. That's what we at least claim to be, because we were Christianized by the Apostle Philip 3 years after Christ, when he met the eunuch of Ethiopia as he was traveling along the Red Sea on his way to India. And he baptized the eunuch, and the eunuch, having invited him to come to his country, Philip came to Ethiopia, taught Christianity, baptized the royal family, and the royal family proclaimed that Christianity shall be the religion of the country, and he built the first church. And then he went back. I say he, I'm referring to Philip, the Apostle Philip. He went back to India and died there. This is the true story that I read, well, the story that I read in my Bible, which is slightly different than the one probably written in English. So we are one of the oldest Christian people on earth. Rome was not yet. St. Peter and St. Paul were still in Thessaloniki, in Greece, and they were shuttling between Crete and those areas, and did not reach Rome when the church was built in Ethiopia. Therefore, I am not biased, or it's not for any other purpose, but I'm telling you the story that I know about Ethiopia, and maybe I'm proud of it, and maybe I might sound a little bit out of my way, but that's the truth. Ethiopia's history goes back to about 5,000 years. The only thing, Ethiopia, we have many holidays, many holidays, but the only holiday that we miss is Independence Day. We don't have any, because we have never been ruled by any foreign power until now. Unlike the countries in its close proximity, Ethiopia is a very unique in its land feature. As this map, drawn by Michelin, the rubber makers, I don't know, they made this map. As you can see, its color is different from the surrounding area. That signifies its altitude from sea level. And the average altitude of the country is 6,000 feet. That is only the average. from where I came, it's about 13 to 15,000 feet above sea level. Although I later on learned that he was a friend of my enemy, and started to my admiration for him has declined. The American great writer Ernest Hemingway, in one of his books, addressed Ethiopia as the island on the sky. That was an appropriate title because it is the only country in the area where that kind of altitude and near permanent temperature is throughout the year. You might wonder that Ethiopia, like some of the Sahara regions, where it is only a sand dune and a brush here and there, but Ethiopia is not so. It is a highland plateau with an average temperature. High is about 65 to 70, low is about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And it is a cool place. You understand why, because of the thin air and of its altitude. It is green most of the year. There are 2 rainy seasons. One big, the big wet season we call it, and there is a small wet season. The other 2 seasons are called dry season. We don't have, like you have here, summer, winter, spring, and autumn. We don't have those. We have wet season and cold season. Dry season. Ethiopia has got a very fertile soil with hundreds and hundreds of all-weather rivers traversing the country, east, west, north, south. Hundreds of rivers, of which you are most familiar with some of them, especially the River Nile. Most of you know human civilization began along the bank of the River Nile. River Nile originates from the heart of Ethiopia, from this lake called Tana. The Blue Nile flows down and goes to Egypt and into Mediterranean. 2 nations exist only on just one river, namely Sudan and Egypt. Ethiopia has over 100 such rivers traversing its land. And the other large river in which the whole nation of Somalia exists is called Wabi Shebele. This river, very large river, big river. They exist in just one river, but Ethiopia has over 100 such types. You can come closely after my address and look for yourself the rivers. And I am not creating that. You can just come and see for yourself. There are over 2 dozens of large lakes, some of which are bigger than the state of Rhode Island. And you can see these rivers, these lakes from a distance. All these blue colors are where the lakes are situated. A country with such stupendous weather and such a prodigal, can anyone believe if anybody tells you that Ethiopia or the calamity that has come upon Ethiopian people is as the result of drought, no. Drought, as we all know, is a natural or God's act. That's what we believe. Believe what you like, but it is God's act. But it takes a willful act of an evil man to turn the act of God into a calamity. And this is what has taken place in my country. There is no point, or there is no, it is very deceiving, or it is one of those evil act of man to blame that disaster on nature. God has given, as I said, Ethiopia all it is prodigal. There is no nation around us that has been self-sustaining, both in its food production, and our surpluses have gained Ethiopia just before the takeover of this evil power. The treasury of my country was near $2 billion in foreign exchange, which has been squandered and been completely empty long time ago. So nature has got nothing to do with the calamity that we saw. It is some kind of an evil power that has rained its terror on my people. Now, a revolution took place in 1974. That revolution was, in every sense of it, was a popular revolution. The revolution was because the old imperial government of Emperor Haile Selassie could not give the kind of change that was coming into the country. I would rephrase that and explain it again. There was no revolution, the revolution was not meant to overthrow Haile Selassie, but for a change. And the Haile Selassie government was not ready to give the kind of a change that was required. I'll explain that also. Hundreds and thousands of highly trained professionals were coming back from higher institutions of learning in Europe or in other parts of Africa, and mostly from America, from a very high institutions such as MIT, Harvard, Columbia University, and all those famous universities as doctors, engineers, scientists. And Ethiopia was not prepared to use, example, a physicist, a nuclear physicist. We have no use for that kind of, but they were coming. with their doctorate degrees. And we had chemical engineers, all sorts of professionals were coming in. And having not been prepared to put these professionals in the right billet, or where they could be of use, there was some kind of dissatisfaction among these professionals and intellectuals. And this dissatisfaction or this frustration grew another frustration among the students in the high school and college. They looked at these highly professional people idly sitting there and doing nothing, and they started to think about their future. And they say, what do we learn for? Okay, this is why I said that the imperial government was not prepared to the kind of exchange that was required, that was necessary. Please understand me, I am not at all, in any way, never even dreamed of the imperial, traditional imperial government to be overthrown, not let alone be an 87-year-old man, very highly respected man, be killed by these sergeants and corporals. Now, that was the case. There was dissatisfaction. Now, in 1973, if you all remember, there was the Arab-Israeli war. As a result of that war, the Arabs used their oil as a weapon to force the Western powers to stop helping Israel. That embargo has shown a tremendous economic recession in the Western industrial powers. It might have not hurt America because America is self-contained and has plenty of oil, but those countries like West Germany, Italy, France, England were really hurt. There was that was a time when all their industry was at a standstill. I remember those years that all automobiles were just what do you call? They were rusting. And I've seen many Europeans go back to their old bogies. That was a rough time, really. That was the time of the world situation. And what did this effect got to do with us? Tremendous effect, because most of our industrial and most of our commercial contact is with the Western Europe and the United States of America. We couldn't buy spare parts because the price went so exorbitant that we cannot afford to buy it. We cannot export our coffee because the transport of coffee, the transportation cost was so exorbitant that the buyer wouldn't accept in that price. So there was very very terrible moment. So there were many thousands upon thousands, if not hundreds and thousands of people whose trade is to repair a car but no spare part. Taxi drivers, that is his bread and water for his family. He had to work, but there is no carburetor. There is nothing, nowhere he could buy. So this has joined, this dissatisfaction has joined force with the intellectual and the student group. Now it has expanded. And worst of all, because the worst thing that happened was the situation in America. America was just recovering from its Vietnam hangover and was had a very weak local government who was an elected president, whose vice president was someone who has been at many Red Square parades, and other result of this Watergate, things were not really very impressive in American politics. Ethiopia, which had been a long time ally of America since the time of President Theodore Roosevelt, who loved that country, who established the American embassy there, had such a close tie with America. The relation between America and my country was, although was normal, the emperor had no favorable response from this end, that he's being threatened by communists. Now, the communists now took advantage of the situation, and they didn't take any time to exploit that situation to the maximum and make more turbulence, so that in the confusion they could seize power and do the rest. So they were free to fill in that vacuum left by United States and Ethiopia's friends, and the Soviet embassy was the only one that was going to the palace, out of the palace to this group of army officers which they have already recruited to take power, because the army being the only institution that is organized, because we didn't have any political party during Haile Selassie's regime. It was only the emperor and then his prime minister and his government, that's all. So since there was no political party, the only organized body of people is the army. So they recruited among the army officers with incredible criteria. He must be dumb, excuse my word, illiterate, stupid, you name it. It must be someone who could be used to achieve their purpose. And they found some officers and uncommissioned officers who have never been educated. In fact, their head now, who calls himself chairman, doesn't know what the inside of school looks like. He's one of the most ignorant, coward, self-serving individual So they found such personality. It was not difficult for them to find because just across the street there is somebody walking. They just call him and be president. That's it. So they organized this man and told them to arrest the emperor, arrest the foreign, the ministers. They arrested them. Next thing they heard from the Soviet was kill them. They killed them. And the techniques they used was to create a terror in the city of Addis Ababa. So 69 of the former officials, without any trial, they just shoot them all and left the emperor alone. The next morning they went to him, dragged him off his throne, and an 83-year-old man was deposed somewhere at a secret place. Later on they told us that he died a natural death. But they refused the Queen of England, the Queen of Netherlands, and many royal families of Europe for the body. But they cremated it, or they said they don't know where it is. Many African leaders wanted to pay tribute, but nobody knows what they did with the body. Anyway, he's gone. I always be sorry about it. Had it not been for him, Ethiopia could have been perhaps 10 centuries back from these days, because he did a lot. He did quite a lot for Ethiopia. He didn't deserve that kind of treatment at his later age. At least we have that culture. We have such a profound respect to our elderly, let alone to a statesman, world statesman. Anyway, that didn't bother them. They killed him. And the next tactics they used to force the people to their domination was to, as I said, to create a terror. They killed 60. That was followed by a purge, which is called Red Terror. Red Terror means anyone who opposes the idea of socialism, socialistic ideology, had to be exposed by his immediate family. In doing so, they gathered the people of a certain area, and one is forced to tell against the other. Right or wrong, they had to be on podiums like this and tell that my wife is against the revolution. Or if it was my wife, she says, oh, my husband is against this revolution. And they have completely uprooted the family fabric. And the mother does not trust her own husband or children, the children and the father vice versa. And what do? If one, tutu we call it, this is a small pistol which when we were little children we used to shoot birds with it. If it is found, let alone, we were all armed prior to that, but they said it is against the law to have any firearm, so everyone was had to give up their arms so that they could do as they please. Anybody who was been found in whose house an empty shell of say a rifle or a pistol is found, the penalty is death. And who does the killing? his own little child will be forced to hold the pistol in front of people. His crime is read to the people, distorted, and the child is asked to do the honor of shooting his father. And this is happening. This has been happening in every quarters of the city, and the people were terrorized. This terror still, this red terror still persists. And this was followed by another terror called Red Star. They always have Red Star, Red Terror, Red this and Red that. Was followed by another one. This time it was those who have been showing their frustration and were showing their dissatisfaction with the government then were at the forefront trying to be leaders. But the communists didn't want those learned people. They don't want them. And they considered them as a threat to their secret desire to take the country. Those politicians who have been trained here in the West were all called upon, and those high school students who have been showing their discontent with the government were allowed to demonstrate and still keep on showing their the former government's their dissatisfaction with the former government. This is called an act of, correct me if the word is right, miscreant. Is it, does it go in English? Miscreant means talking so much bad things about the former one, so that you, the people's, you divert them. Miscreant. I don't know if in English it's miscreant in French. So that was the technique. At the same time, so they were told to come out with all.
Just the volume, sir.
What happened was they thought it was free march and peaceful, and they were coming by thousands.
Is that better?
They massacred them. Anybody that was out there was massacred. This was in 1977. 3 years after they had been to power. They massacred anyone who was from actually many sixth graders have been killed, anyone above that. And this is to create all the learned or all those who know, and all those who could question the Soviet intent were all killed. Some of them escaped, and but all of them have been used as a tool. This has been a repeated technique the Soviets use still everywhere in the world. They approach the students. The students have been tools for the Soviet, and they have been always the first targets to be wiped out when they seize power. So this is what has transpired, and ever since they seized power, there has been nothing but terror, incarceration, fear, murder, you name it. It is just unbelievable. It is unbelievable how we really existed. But finally, the most largest error that they made was tampering with religion. They outlawed any worship that is the last, that is the end of the line. So the people, especially the peasants, who know nothing but their church and their land, have revolted. Those of us who have been also looking for a resistance had a full backing of the peasants and the farmers, that we raised our arms and started to drive the communists and contain them in an area where they are in power, that is the city. The venom of these ideologies that the Soviet injected into the country was counterproductive in that respect. They are fools to tamper with religion in Ethiopia, because religion means everything for both the Muslim and the Christian. We believe that this world, we are only journey people in this world. Our world is with Christ. That's what we believe. And come out on stage, and they were asked to do something that a priest wouldn't do. If he doesn't do it, they kill him. So the priests, most of the priests, prefer to be shot at and die right there. This has spread all over the country, and resistance has been going on since then. Of course, our resistance is nothing to be compared with the kind of force they have been. They have a tremendous force. They have aircrafts, gunships, helicopters, and artilleries. All what we have is our faith and spirit of freedom, because we both these two essential or important elements of our history with tenacity for thousands of years, and we are not about ready to give it up for some power who has got no relation, both who had no relation at all with us. So the revolution has been going on. I mean, the resistance has been going on, as a result of which the government, under the expert advice, I wouldn't say government, I'm sorry, the regime which has been placed there, there were about 120. Out of them, they have been killing each other, and there are about 40 now, out of 140. And under an expert advice of East German Gestapos and Soviet KGBs and whatever they call themselves, adapted a very diabolical campaign with the name of eradicating the entire people living in Eritrea, Tigray, Gondar, or Begemeder, Wallo, Gojam, and Wallaga, this area, completely this area, and replace and make a completely a wasteland where the theory of regeneration of mankind could be experimented. When that land is completely free of the localities, resistance cannot be mounted, because we resistance fighters cannot mount any resistance from there, because the peasants, the farmers were our hideouts. They were our guides. They were our informers. They were our everything. So what this devils did was to adapt a policy which one of the most cruel man this world has ever seen and never been told us. I like to say it. Somebody might tell me that who is the cruelest man in the world? Who has done such a crime to humanity? Somebody might say Hitler. False. Hitler killed people, and the number is perhaps 50 million. That's nothing as compared to how many people Stalin killed. Stalin killed 180 million people. And nobody talks that he's a cruel man. He's in fact a righteous man today in Kremlin. He is considered as their leader. That's why I say this nation called Soviet Union is founded on such brute individuals such as Stalin. And they are still, the steel like you have here, your smelter here. It's just like a steel by blood and tears of millions upon millions of people. Okay, the whole idea is that there should be, according to their dream, and the dreamers are not the Russian people. Please understand, Russian peoples are the most honest, the most religious people, like us, like we want to be addressed to. They are truly nice people. Russians, Ukrainians, Georgians, Armenians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Latvians, all these people are very religious, honest people. But there are 20 men. The 20 men are the real demons. People who want to rule the world, who have managed to muzzle 1.8 billion people, to say nothing, to do nothing, but just submit to these 20 men who are called the Politburo members in Kremlin. I'm afraid we might have some members from the United States who will be or who wants to be members of these 20 demons. Perhaps there might be some candidates already, and they want to rule the world. That's the whole purpose. Communism is supposed to be for the downtrodden mass. That's what they preach, isn't it? It is for the mass. But it is on the contrary. They are killing the mass of my people for the sake of a couple of their servants who usurped our good our revolution of good intent to their own purpose. I think I'm getting a little late. Let me go a little back. I don't need this because I just put it for formality. I know what I'm talking about, and whatever you hear is bliss from the horse's mouth, because I have been there. Why Ethiopia? What do they have? What do we have in common with these demons called Soviet USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic? What have we got in common? Nothing, except that their greatest poet claims to be an Ethiopian. I don't know how, but Pushkin claims to be Ethiopian. I don't know how he went there. Became a great. We have nothing. We have even, except in geography class, we never heard about that country. Is there far away, and we have nothing in common at all. Perhaps our churches are the same before they eradicated or tried to outlaw religious belief in Soviet Union. Our church is similar. We are Orthodox. They are also Eastern Orthodox. Except that we have nothing in common. They were in Egypt, they were kicked out. They were in Sudan, they were kicked out. They were in Somalia, they were kicked out. They have always been dreaming to get a warm water port, deep port, in the Red Sea. Why do they want that? It's not for Ethiopia. Ethiopia is probably a parasite nation for their economy. It's not for that. But it's for their own intent, which was to have Ethiopia, by having Ethiopia and South Yemen, for the first time in the history of the Middle East and the world, they have managed so far to have a full control of the Red Sea, Southern Red Sea, and the entrance to the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf, Gulf of Aden here. They have a full control there. They probably will, you probably need a permission to pass through that, Soviet permission to pass through that now. And soon it might be closed. We have learned in the 1973 embargo what happened and the ramifications of it for the industrial powers of Britain and the rest. Ironically, in order to reinforce this invasion, we have been always led to believe that it is for the good of mankind, all what they do, and we've always been out of good intention. This most powerful government, most powerful nation on earth, has always been with intent or without knowing the ramification of it, have been financing large Soviet projects from giving it the secret of the splitting of atom to the technology of computer to giving it all the assistance that it asks for any financial or credit from any prime or perhaps U.S. Treasury as aid or grant. In so doing, we have financed, this country has financed this power of the demon to achieve its goal by building a pipeline from Siberia across the Ural Mountain to Western Europe so that it could sell its product, control the valve anytime it wishes, anytime it is ready to mobilize its force. All what it does, what they do, is since they have Ethiopia and South Yemen and a great fleet here, and they have one of the largest, they have built one of the largest air base in this island called Dahlak that could cover Mediterranean and threaten this 7th fleet, 8th fleet, which fleet is in Mediterranean, threaten that. And with another one of their mad dog who is let loose in Libya, they can do a lot of, they can easily choke Western Europe. And then the industries will stop. Even the tanks cannot move without fuel. So fuel, they have realized, is the weapon. And economic war is what would get the Europeans on their knees, because that pipeline that we built is will be about the only source of supply they could get, and they probably might pay unbelievable price for it. So once Europe is gone, America will be isolated and will be alone. And as they are doing now, Ethiopia is intended to be used as a Cuba, the role Cuba plays in the Central America and South America. So with 800,000 standing army, they are now working on Kenya. Sudan will hear next April there will be an election, but the political unrest in the south, we have heard of it, that they are training insurgents, and it is a matter of time to completely take the whole of Africa using Ethiopian surrogate force. Let's not call them Ethiopian anymore, because they have just given a decree that about 700,000 Cubans with their family are ready to go and be the new breed of regenerated socialist, whatever they call themselves, I don't know what, because there are no Ethiopians living there. And the program will continue of killing Ethiopians. And they bring from East Germany, from Cuba, from all these socialist countries, and make it once and for all a socialist people's melting pot, and that's the whole tactic. Until then, they will keep on expanding to the interior of Africa, and once Africa is in their hand, they have all the mineral potential that Africa has, They have already choked Europe and Cuba and the situation in Mexico and many Central Americans. America will be the only, America could be left alone. I mean, it will be isolated. Now, recently I heard I was in Miami on the 22nd. I went on the 22nd of January. I was there and was listening to Havana. It was broadcasting to a propaganda broadcast aimed at the black southern communities, telling them that is Louisiana, no, not Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia are called New Africa. They call them New Africa. And they agitate, that's your country, you have to fight for it, gain your independence, that's their hullabaloos. And then an hour later, the same broadcast was directed to Hispanics, telling the Hispanics that Texas is theirs, Arizona, Texas, and what's the next adjacent one? California, and it mentioned this kind. And say, why do you want to give up your land? And, propaganda. So it's already here. Since 1970, America, this great power, has been on the retreat. To stand where? I don't know. We, most of us that are from the third world countries, have almost lost faith in America. It didn't stand firm and say, no, I stop here. But has been on the retreat and is now brewing there. And a few hours later, it was broadcasting on Apache language. It is going on. And we still help the perpetrators of this by sitting and signing treaties with them, whose history it is that they are always, there was no one treaty that the Soviet Unions have respected. They signed a treaty with Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia when Hitler attacked Poland. The treaty was that they will go back when the war was over. Where are they? They are still there. They have signed a treaty with that nation, with the same intent. But once in, never out is their policy. Therefore, signing this treaty, that treaty with them, is only really giving them time to reach their intent of worldly domination. And if we all prefer to be dominated, we are doing a good job. Just keep silent about it. But no one can tell the agony of being downtrodden because of my country, my liberty, my folks. And I tell you, there is nothing a man could get. Man could withstand so many things, but when you lose a country and your freedom, it is the final thing. If I lose my mother there will be my father to look up to, or my aunt. If I lose my mother or my father, the same thing, vice versa. But when you lose your country, you have lost it all. Your home, yourself. You are a servant. You are a slave. Now my people are being exported as slaves to work in Havana, in Cuban sugarcane farm. They are being shipped there to work there. They are shipped to Afghanistan to fight the Soviet war. My own people are going and fighting for the Soviet cause in Mozambique, in Angola. Because they have no freedom of choice. They can't say, no, I can't go. They have to go. And many are being ready to be shipped to work in Siberia, road construction, they said, I think. Thousands of them. So we are not, there has not been any government in Ethiopia since 1973, 74, since the emperor was overthrown. It is some foreign power that occupied us. Don't we have right to fight back? And if we have to fight back, don't we have to be supported by those people who cherish independence and freedom? We have to be supported. Unless we are supported and contain the Soviets and their surrogates and their influence out of that area, I have told you the ramification of it. What will happen to England? What will happen to industrial France and the United States, to that matter? And we are fighting the war for the interest of all these people with no help. And we are fighting with an Alpine Italian rifle, the old Mauser. Some of you know those names, I'm sure. Mausers and Alpines. With no food for 2-3 weeks. And such a horrible nightmare still persists on us. And of course, your intent for saving life out of your compassionate, your assistance of food and finance has been used to get those people who survived because of your help to be relocated in an area where it is completely impossible for any Highlander to live. He will die, and they have been dying. And the only friends that we found and told the world, understood and told it boldly, are a French organization called Médecins Sans Frontières, which means Doctors Without Frontier. They stood up and told the world that these people are not to be at all addressed as government, or nothing should be channeled through them. And they have explained what we are doing along the Sudanese border here. We are 5 million of us. Do you know the largest refugee population in the world? It is us. It's not Chinese. Chinese are 1 billion, and we are only 42 million. But we are already 5 million in Sudan, and about 2 million in Somalia, here and here. And all around it's flooded with Ethiopian refugees. Who wants to fight back? Please help us is what we have been sounding. And your help that has gone through, the government has saved life, definitely, with thanks to, first of all, you, and then those who those dedicated individuals who escorted the gift and delivered, but with a strenuous and ceaseless bureaucratic delays or diversions or a large portion of it, of course, have been allowed to rotten. Anyway, this is what you address as government. That these are not these rebels, these usurpers are not to be addressed as government because they don't represent one single Ethiopian. They don't. And we have established a resistance force. There are many resistance forces. There are Eritreans who are fighting for secession. There are Tigrayans. There are Gondares. There are Oromos, Somalis, who fight this foreign power that is in occupation and cause for the tyranny from all angles. Now, we found out that we cannot go on fighting the enemy individually, I mean, from each front. If we concentrate our forces, not by creating force, but our whole mind together, we have reasons, and a good reason, a good one, reason to believe that we can overthrow the existing power by the army it has made up, which is about 800,000 man army to be used to conquer Africa. We can use them against the regime and the occupying force. If not, we invite the Soviet citizens who are unfortunate like us to come and die fighting with us. And we can stand fighting there, because I tell you, one of the reasons why Ethiopia was not conquered by any foreign power except now is because of its land feature. So mountainous, it is impossible to rule Ethiopia by force. And they know it. So if they want to come, I'm sure they will be welcome, but it must not be against each other. That's what is we are trying to avoid. Let them come from wherever they come from, and we want to send them back in a coffin. And then that might change. Many mothers whose son went marching and came back in coffin will ask in Soviet Armenia, why did my son die? You know, when this thing makes a lot of dissatisfaction among the people, they will probably take the same action that American society have taken as a result of Vietnam War. It has changed it. It has shown how powerful the people are. So I don't think the Soviets could afford to fight, unless, of course, America helps them by financing all their projects and spend all their economy in Sovietizing Africa and the rest of the world. But if America stops financing anything for any communist country, I think they will, that's about the only weapon that's necessary for, to beat them. But for us, it is the only way we can win the Soviets is to play their games. And their games is to first use their technique of cultivating the mind. And we have a good publications which I have with me to warn all other countries surrounding us not to fall victims to their rule, because they have seen what happened to our country. And my organization, which is called EPDA, Ethiopian People Democratic Alliance, It's only alliance is well organized, and we are endeavoring to contain the Soviet, and we hope that we'll have the assistance of all freedom-loving people. And this is only for freedom that we are fighting, and that freedom we ask for is not, we don't expect to be given to us, but we want to, we have been robbed and cynically enslaved. We want to get it back by whatever the cost may be. And in this endeavor, holy endeavor, I'm sure anyone who cherishes his freedom in this country will realize how important is freedom. And I am very thankful for the John Birch Society, which has given me this opportunity to tell American public that the war has been declared a long time ago, and we have been on the retreat. And wherever our stand or last stand be, I do not know, and I'm not here to remind you or to tell you that the reality of this thing. You already know it, but it is important. It is important not only to America. It is important for the whole world, for whole the people of the whole world who love freedom, that America should be protected. It is America's America is a hope for all of us. If America is gone, I don't know. I don't have the means to go to the moon. That might be the only place I could go, or just go underwater. I don't know. Therefore, we must stand. We must let our representatives, we must voice our concern about communism's infiltration into Africa, into Asia. Now they are doing a good job in Philippines. They are doing a good job. From Ethiopia, they have confiscated one of the most powerful radio stations that was owned by American Lutheran Church. That's called Voice of the Gospel. The Voice of the Gospel was broadcasting even for listeners in Moscow and China, let alone for Africa. Very powerful radio station. Now that radio station is being used exclusively propaganda for Africa, particularly aimed against the South African blacks and against the South African people, that so that there will be arrest in that country, and they could have a rat hole to inject their venom of corrupt ideology. Therefore, we have got the facts, we have got the truth, and if we don't voice it to people, or if we don't place those people who really represent us in this great nation's capital, we are doomed. And I'm very thankful for your attention, and I thank John Birch Society for having me this privilege, and I will be back for questions if you have any. And I think the master ceremony will have the floor. Thank you.